Hey everybody, Quantum here. I don't know if I should really call this a deck profile because this is my fifth attempt at trying to record this video and I keep going off on tangents. If you know my love-hate relationship with discard, you know exactly why. It is a control deck. I love control decks, but it is the wrong kind of control deck. It is a very toxic play style. It doesn't facilitate great interaction and gameplay in my opinion. It is a one-sided affair. And in this set, Reign of Jafar, we are poised to enter the most miserable meta you have ever seen. And I was saying this a while ago, and some of you guys were doubting me. Discard is fine, and Diablo is fine. Prince John is not. You're whining too much. Today, Saturday, May 31st. It's approaching midnight. There was the first major tournament right at SSG, where Emerald Steel was the most represented deck. It was the most represented in top 8, and of course, it ended up winning the tournament. Totally expected. First seed ended up taking it the whole way through. I think they swept everything. I don't think they lost a single match, but I could be wrong on that. I didn't watch the tournament live. I did catch bits and pieces here and there, and I caught game 2 of the finals, which was absolutely disgusting. I do need to make a separate video because I do want to cover this deck profile, and I don't want to continue ranting and waste your time if you are interested in the deck profile, but. Um, we will review that meta report, and if they post the matches live, I would hope that it would be okay for me to go and commentate over them because I really do think that some things in that matchup really need to be pointed out. We know that Discard has unbeatable lines of play. Like if they get a certain line of play, it's very, very unlikely that you win that game. It's like a 90 to 10% chance, like a 9 to 1 chance that you're able to win the game if they get a good curve out. They're on the play, they're dictating pace, they're discarding your hand, they're drawing extra cards. Like there's nothing you can do to really come back from that. And this build here with the Beyond the Horizon adds, similar to what it does with Amber Steel's Song when I talked about that, a different dimension to the deck, right? It forces your opponent now to play around this potential very powerful interaction that essentially when it gets cast could be game ending, likely is game ending. The goal, unlike with Amber Steel's Song to develop the singers and sing this early, the goal with Emerald Steel Discard is you have the Prince John. Because when you have Prince John and you're able to sing Beyond the Horizon, likely on turns 4 or 5, depending on how many cards you have on board to sing it together, whatever you make your opponent discard for your Prince John, you will end up drawing. So if your opponent has 3 cards in hand and they discard those 3 to draw a new 3, you will also, and you choose yourself, you draw 3, and then you draw 3 for your Prince John because your opponent discarded 3. In the finals of game 2 of that tournament, this was on full display, where the Ruby Amethyst player, in my opinion, made a big mistake because, and they knew that like they needed to play around the Beyond the Horizon because they played an Elsa the turn before a tap down an Ursula Deceiver to take it out to prevent the Singer 7 being on board between 2 Prince Johns and the Deceiver. But then they ended up playing into it because they could have ended their next turn with just 1 card in hand and deployed a Shark on the board so they would have Shark as follow-up. But they ended up doing some rabbit sequence that ended with 2 Foxes on board and 5 cards in hand. And then the opponent had 2 Prince Johns on board already, ends up playing a 3rd Prince John, and then deploying the Beyond the Horizon, in which case, as the Ruby Amethyst player, you discard all 5 and you draw 3. And then what happens, right? And then the Emerald Steel player also chose themselves, discard, draw 3. And then the Emerald Steel player continued to draw 15 cards for a total of 18 cards, 1/3 of their deck pretty much in their hand, because 3 Prince Johns times 5 cards that your opponent discarded. And then your opponent's on 3 cards, 6 ink. You're on 18 cards, 6 ink. And you were on the draw that game. The game is over. The game is over. This kind of interaction, Ravensburger definitely needs to look at and do something about it. Because we're poised to enter the most miserable meta. Beyond set 2 Ruby Amethyst, beyond Bucky meta, beyond Hiram, Sapphire, Ruby, Sapphire, Steel kind of stuff. You are in a position, or we are in a position in this game where we're just trying to make the other player not play the game, right? That's effectively what it is. Again, I know I've been ranting on this for a long time, and this is part of the deck profile because we're talking about what this card is doing for discard now and how Prince John is a key piece of that discard. You're not playing aggressive discard cards. Like you have Hypnotize, you have Sudden Chill, and I mean, I guess Bruno, but that's technically removal, and Ursula Deceiver, right? Like, and Ursula Deceiver is very limited. It has some niche uses, but it obviously is very good. And you can argue that you don't even play Hypnotize in this deck because you can argue that you just play towards the Beyond the Horizon. That's how powerful this interaction is, because once you draw enough cards, you'll start outing whatever your opponent has with your action or your songs here, and then you just set up a board that's basically unbreakable, right? Because your opponent's not going to have any cards, and you have 3 different card advantage engines in Diablo, Prince John, and Beast. That's why you also play Morph, so an extra shift target for Diablo, for Beast, and for Pete. And yeah, don't get me wrong, Pete in and of itself is another whole problem with this deck. I can't believe they gave this deck this card, but they need to ban Prince John. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't know. I guess, attempt number 5 of this video, you're gonna play 4/1 drops. You're not really gonna play anything else. You could fit in the Captain Hook package, right? The new Captain Hook is actually pretty good in this deck, in my opinion. The Pirate King and the reprint of the Forceful Duelist. This is also very powerful, because if you go turn 1 this, turn 2 Deceiver, turn 3 Shift this hook, right? You have Singer 7 on board, which is Beyond the Horizon, right? But you can also play the longer stall game, because you don't really care what your opponent develops, because you know you're going to deal with it, similar to what Amber Steel Song does. You're going to sing these songs probably more efficiently with Ursula Deceiver of All, since you get double singing off of this to clear boards. And then by the time you set up uninteractable things like Prince John and Muses, you don't even need these cards like Diablo, the Pete's, like anything else setting, like any characters, and you play 37 characters. Setting up for Beyond the Horizon is just a positive interaction for you, because similar to why Amber Steel Song makes this card broken, Emerald Steel also makes it broken. I'll deal with your board. We both discard 3. I draw 3. You draw 3. I have a board. You don't have a board. But with Emerald Steel, I also, if you did discard something and I had the Prince John up, would get extra cards in my hand. So while we are supposed to both end up with 3, this card makes it so I end up with, and well, in the case of the finals of the SSG tournament, 18 cards, because I have 3 of them on board. But that's a pretty high rolly situation. Regardless, that is the problem with this deck. The Morph, like I said, for the Beast, for the Pirate, Space Pirate Pete, for Prince John, or for Diablo, your 2 drops, Ursula Deceiver as well, and then Sudden Chill. Your 3 drops is your critical point, and you have a lot of options. Prince John, Ursula Deceiver of All, Pete. You probably don't hardcast any of the songs here, or you could, you have to hardcast Hypnotize, but you probably want to wait with this until the Prince John is up and your opponent's getting lower and lower in resources, where the discard becomes more impactful, right? It's better to discard when they have 2 to 3 cards in their hand than discard when they have 5 or 6, right? It makes the decision much harder for them and forces out awkward lines of play. On the 4 slot, you only need Muses. You wouldn't normally ever play 4 Muses, and I don't even know if this is correct. I would say you probably still just reduce it to like 3. But simply because this plus the John both have Ward and they sit there uninteractable, this right here is Singer 7, or Sing Together 7, right? And they have Ward, so your opponent can't do anything to them. It's way before Be Prepared. It's way before anything comes online that can deal with them. Like, they don't even have good challenge-ready character cards, right? Like, it just doesn't make any sense why this deck exists. You definitely want to play Beast Tragic Hero and Pete Space Pirate. You absolutely need both of these cards, I would say. The Beast Tragic Hero being a draw engine, but also being a character that can be a 7/5 is relevant to deal with locations on the other end. And then the Pete is just Pete. I've already talked about this card to endless review about why it's so good, especially in this deck. No Mr. Smee, no other real pirates to get the ability. But if you do play the Captain Hook package, this with the Captain Hook do synergize off each other. So there is that as well. Again, the Hypnotize is neither here nor there. I think, you could replace this with the new chip that we got. That could be an option because the chip is a body, but it doesn't draw you a card, obviously. Hypnotize will draw you a card, and it will draw you more than 1 card if you have a Prince John or 2 up. This card will only draw if you have a Prince John up, but it is a body that is a 3/2 and does cost 4, which means it's good to contribute towards that Singer, but that is another option. But all in all, I mean, there's nothing really to review with this deck. You still are able to curve out nicely. Basically, all you care about is curving out to 3. If you miss your Diablo, that's fine. Hopefully you have Morph then on the follow through to shift Diablo. Even if you don't have this line, you're aiming towards going for the Prince John line. And once this is set up, once you get to Beyond the Horizon, it's pretty much GG. And I did talk about, this deck having a bit of consistency issues, but it doesn't even matter because when you are a deck that will continually strip away your opponent's options before they play them, they're big threats. And even if you're not generating a ton of advantage at the time with like Prince John drawing off the discard or Diablo drawing your extra cards, or you don't have time to set up your beast yet because it's still like turn 3 or 4, the threat that you are putting on your opponent of, oh my gosh, I have to like dump my hand, I have to play more aggressively, I have to expose myself, I have to overextend because I don't want them to surprise drop Prince John and then sing Beyond the Horizon and then I discard 5 cards. So it makes my game plan impossible to execute. And this is why they banned Hiram and Fortisphere, right? Because they said it was suppressing too many decks in the format. This arguably does way more because any deck that tries to play with a hand gets blown out because of Beyond the Horizon. Like, this is the card that should be banned, but I mean, they just released it. I mean, I bought 8 foils for an average of $4 a piece, and I said this card was probably going to 20. Um, After that SSG tournament gets posted and people see the results and how popular Horizon discard is and Amber Steel Song and all that stuff, the card will start to go up even more. There's a reason why it was being bought out as the uncommon non-foil, right, on pre-orders. Like that's how much people know this card is good. Um, so hopefully you understood this deck profile. I know it sounds a lot like I'm complaining, but honestly, guys, I care about this game and I care about you guys watching the video and the health of the game and our experiences in the game. And as an experienced TCG player from both Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic, I can tell you, like, it's the most frustrating aspects of those games is not being able to play the game. Like, that's why I'm playing the game, right? I want to play the game. And a game like Lorcana is very well balanced because if you lose a game, it's not super frustrating usually because you're like, well, I built my deck and I had a certain amount of inkables and a certain amount of uninkables and I made those decisions and we're both building up our cards. And yeah, you may get a little bit more lucky than me. That's an inherent part of card games. But, at the end of the day, we all make these decisions and, we are both able to play and experience the game and it's fun. And a deck like this doesn't allow you to do that. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just go ahead and play against an Emerald Steel. I will play you as the Emerald Steel. I will be Emerald Steel discard, and you play a deck other than discard, and we'll see how fun it is. I guarantee you won't have fun. Even if I lose the game, I guarantee you'll be stressing. Like, it's just how it is, right? Like, again, I have a Ruby Emerald discard video where I posted, and you can just see the power and how fast that deck just wins games. And it's not even the top tier version of discard, but that's how toxic discard is. I think discard could exist in the meta, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent here discussing some game concept and design concepts. Like, I think when Prince John came out, it was a very powerful card and it was maybe fine at the time, but as you got more aggressive with the discard and you gave Prince John more and more powerful options and individual discard cards, like the new chip that just came out, for example, even though that's not played in here, but when you give it complete blowout cards like Beyond the Horizon, it just makes this card imbalanced for what it is, what it was originally designed for. And it's time that this card goes. And I don't think we can wait for set rotation. Otherwise, set 8 is going to be absolutely miserable. And you can say, well, Quantum, like, you're like, what are you talking about? Like, you could have played Prince John with a whole new world and made your opponent discard their cards. And then, you draw 7 and then you draw like another 3. And that was around back then. And nobody did that. Yeah, it's a completely different concept with Beyond the Horizon. And again, unless you play against it or you play it yourself and you can figure out how that goes. And again, don't take my word for it. Look at what happened at the SSG tournament. There is almost no good counterplay to those lines of play. Even if you rip the Beyond the Horizon out of their hand, guess what? The Emerald Steel discard deck still does what Emerald Steel discard do. Similar to if you're able to rip the Beyond the Horizon out of the Amber Steel Song player's hand. Guess what? Steel Song still does what Steel Song wants to do. This is just a backup blowout tier 0 option for the deck. Like, if they get this off, like what happened in game 2 of that finals of the SSG tournament, it's just a win. It's just a pure win condition in and of itself, right? Let it, like, take away the fact that you've disrupted your opponent. I forced you to discard your 3 cards, which I'm sure you've been building up your board state to be able to facilitate some of those cards in your hand to play. Now you're discarding those and drawing a brand new 3, dealing with a new situation. But I'm also gaining a ton of advantage off of this card as well. Like, I'm exploiting the fact that I can draw the extra cards. And that's why this deck is broken. And then, I'll continue to generate advantage through Beast Tragic Hero. Whatever you end up playing, like I said, I just remove it with any of my 12 removal spells, saving them for when I know I absolutely need to use them. I can lock out some blowout cards that you might have against me, such as Be Prepared, by deploying some Peats. I can also bounce threats if you're an aggro deck and you're permanently questing for, or permanently threatening me to quest for game, by bouncing your stuff back and then forcing you to discard. And then, once I get a certain setup going, it's basically going to be impossible for you to quest for that final bit of lore. Well, there's a reason why it's the most represented deck right now. Will that always be the case? Will other decks come out into the format to combat this? Unlike the Sapphire meta that we experienced last set, I don't think so. And this is why I didn't have a problem with Hiram or with Fortisphere or with Sapphire Ruby, Sapphire Steel. In decently high level matches, like, I found those decks beatable. I was playing against them and I was beating them. I posted content about people engineering decks that had like 60% win rates, right? Like that one unique Ruby Amethyst, Emerald Amethyst, like the discard deck came up to combat the Sapphire decks and they were having success. Like, there was good counterplay. And the reason is, while those decks, don't get me wrong, they were oppressive, and they did draw a lot of cards, and they had a lot of removal, it didn't make it so that you couldn't play the game. You still had your own draw engines, you still had your own cards that you could utilize to get underneath them or even exploit them. And because they did have exploitable traits, a deck like this doesn't really, like, the deck like this really only loses to itself. And it's been that way for a while, but it's even more relevant now because they have a way to just completely reset things to a certain extent with Beyond the Horizon, right? So that's why in my opinion, I think we're set up for a meta that's even worse this set, which is terrible. If Ravensburger doesn't end up banning the Prince John, like, if you ban Prince John, I think Diablo can stay. Because I've been saying Diablo is a problem, and it is a problem. This card should have been printed to say, during each opponent's turn, whenever they draw a card, like, except for their draw step. So if I draw for turn, you don't draw off Diablo, but if I sing Friends and draw 2, then I would draw off Diablo. To be honest, the card wouldn't be nearly as good, obviously, if that was the case, but it would still be a decent card. But the Prince John here is by far the biggest problem. Discard already goes 1 for 1 when it forces you to discard a card. The fact that I'm able to draw off of it and the fact that I'm able to exploit it to the maximum degree with Beyond the Horizon is the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. So I'm making the prediction, if you made it this far in the video, that the Prince John will get banned. Because I just think a lot of people are going to find this very miserable to play against. The sweaties, the tryhards at your locals and stuff will be on this deck 100%. For your set champs, if this is still around, they will play this deck, and it will be It will be a miserable format. Again, don't take my word for it. Play it yourself and find out. Anyways, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. It's kind of like a rant video, I guess. But if you made it this far, I do appreciate it. Thank you for the support. And hopefully, well, I mean, I guess we'll see what comes of the set 8 meta. But thank you for watching. Quantum is out.